Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colynn
And I'm Meridee.
and welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colynn. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meridee?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colynn here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go. All right.
Hello,
welcome,
everybody.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
So today, on this episode of Spiritual Sisters with Sass, we are chatting with Lindsay again. So we did an episode with Lindsay called Getting Clean with Lindsay. And now we are going to kind of dig in a little bit. She's been going through some things over the last few weeks. I'm going to say probably the last month has been like some of her biggest personal growth experiences. You guys have heard a little bit on the podcast that we've talked about the different things that she's kind of gone through, and that like we did a coaching session, and basically she made an agreement with herself to work through some of her deepest traumas. And within that, she really softened for a period of time, which then led to her getting really hard because she exposed herself and opened herself up to basically the opportunity to be hurt, which she has not done since she was like a little kid. So I was the best friend that she basically was like, yo, I'm fucking over you and I don't want to talk to you anymore, which is what an accountability best friend is going to be like, or an accountability friend is going to be like. We had some challenging conversations, and today we're just going to kind of dig into what she's experienced and how she's moving through her shit, which is what I think we're going to call the podcast, Moving Through Your Shit, because that is what we have to do. So I think we should start with Lindsay, her husband, her child, her oldest child, and I, and her, obviously.
Unfortunately,
we had a 2.5 hour coaching session outside of her house. And it started with, she just wanted her husband to change everything, basically. And then we sat down and started talking about the things that he changed. And he sat there and opened himself up and said, okay, I'm willing to do this, this, and this as per your request. And then I said, okay, and what are you going to do? And she was like, well, I feel like you're ganging up on me and I just don't want to have this conversation. And I was like, I think that your ego's out and I think we need to dig into this. And she sat there literally like this little child who was like, fuck you. And then I said, hey, I'm going to hug you. And we did talk about this in one of our podcasts. And I said to her, like, hey, I'm going to hug you. Are you okay with that? And she was like, no. So I didn't hug her. I let her sit for a second, for a few minutes. And then I came to her and I was like, look, I'm just going to love you. I can see the little girl in you needs the love. And I pulled her up and she was open to it. I hugged her.
I was not open to it. You fucking forced me.
But also I wasn't like, forcing.
No, you didn't like, no.
Like
but
I wasn't.
It was a non-negotiation. There was no negotiation.
She knew
Let's
she
just-
needed it.
It wasn't physical force, it was emotional.
Yes,
Okay?
yes,
We're just
yes.
clarification
Yeah.
here.
So I did force her into something that was super uncomfortable for her, but if
Hugs
she
are
really,
yucky. I mean, I don't like hugging. I don't like physical contact at all, especially when I'm in that mindset.
Are
Like,
you open to telling them why? You can say no. You can absolutely say no.
You know what I
Like,
just
this could
did?
connect with
I
other people as well.
literally just sat on my mastermind and told my mastermind everything that was a skeleton in my closet today. Everything.
It's hard. Like, even like, because like I've talked to a few people about it, but like I've only told, like, Cole was the first person I ever
Yep.
told, and I was like 28.
Yes.
And then Cole was the only one that knew until Meridee knew, like 3 years ago, like
Yep.
just after Monroe. So like, I mean, I've
She
told
told
a handful of people.
Yeah, she told the 5 people in our group coaching. when
Yeah,
she
and like
came
there's a
clean.
few other people that like if they ask like we're like on the topic of like me trying to relate to them, like I just make it so that I understand because this happened, but it's not something that like I'm like totally free to like bullshit about with everybody and like fucking this is what happened, blah blah blah. Like it's still really like it's a hard subject.
It
So
is.
I was molested as a child by my mom's husband, and it was a reoccurring thing for a very long time. My mom was a raging alcoholic, and her only concern was getting drunk. So on the nights that he decided he wanted to do whatever it was that he wanted to do, he would get her past the point of inebriation and she would pass out, and then he had the freedom to do whatever because he knew she wasn't going to wake up. So whether or not she knew what was going on, that was something like, and then he would tell me if I told anybody that he would kill my mom and he would beat the shit out of me and I'd be stuck with him forever and he wouldn't let me see my grandparents and like all of the things you could possibly say to a kid that would scare the living shit out of them is what he would tell me. So I didn't tell anybody, and then I finally told a counselor, and the counselor showed up at the house while my mom was at work, explained the situation, and left me there with him. So that was the beating of my life. That beating landed me in the hospital for quite a few days. I had a very serious condition when I was a kid that it was a beating that almost cost me my life. So it was very scary. And then I just completely set a wall up because I was like, I can't even trust a counselor who's supposed to help me
and
protect me. And then growing up, I was like, I don't need a fucking counselor. They never did anything for me. I don't need help. I don't need your help. I don't need your help. So then anytime somebody like Cole would come into my life and I'd start to feel any sort of way, I'm like, ooh, this is yucky. Like, I'm out, man. Like, I don't like this. I don't like that you can hurt me. I don't like that you're going to take advantage of my vulnerability, all of the things. So like I would drink. And then people could get whatever they wanted from me because everything was down because I was drunk. So it was like, oh, it's a fucking vicious cycle of shit, man. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
And so
It's rough.
in that, if you touch her unwanted, it takes her back to that place.
Ooh, and I just want to hit you. Like,
So
I just want to like,
hugs are gross.
Yeah.
You put your hands on her without permission or without asking or without her knowledge.
Sober.
Her immediate reaction is,
Yep.
oh my God, and she pulls back. Much like if somebody starts yelling at Lynn, her reaction is, oh my God, I'm like ready to be hit.
Yep.
So there's an automatic survival reaction that happens to us. And we've talked about this through our podcasts. And so when it came to me putting my hands on Lindsay, she was not comfortable. Now, I respected that she was not comfortable, but I also knew I could see where the push needed to come. So it wasn't like I was invading her in an inappropriate way. I was invading her in a discomfort kind of way. So there is these different ways that you can do it. And within that coaching session, I literally made her hug me. I felt her release into me as I hugged her. And then I asked her husband to come up and hug her as well. It was a lot harder for her to allow him to do so. But then after we finished the conversation, she processed some of the feelings. She then went and was like committed to the things that she had said she would do. So she would come home every day. That her husband actually made a point to her, which we both thought was really interesting. The point was, you pay more attention to the dog and tell him he's handsome more often than me. And I looked at him and I said, her dog can't hurt her. And
he doesn't give a fuck what I look like, what I do, what I say, how I act. He's just there.
And he can like her. So when she walks in the door, she's like, oh, my handsome boy. And her husband's like, hey, your handsome boy's over here. And so
But
her
that was my mom
commitment-
though. But then I realized my entire life, my mom chose her dog over me every single time. So I remember saying, I can't wait to grow up so I can sit in the front seat where Max is, or I can't wait until Max dies so you'll pay more attention to me, or like, and like that wasn't even a thought in my brain until like I sat and processed. So instead of drinking that feeling away or being like, whatever, your feelings don't matter, he's a fucking dog, blah, 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 I sat in it and I was like, where does that come from? And then I realized my mom loved her dog way more. Like he was number one. If the house was on fire, it was the dog first and then the kids. So like just thinking about that, I was like, oh shit, like I'm being my mom. So now instead of being pissed off at him and being like, you're a fucking idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm now like, Pyro, wait, hi babe, how are you? I love you. Now, and then I make a joke, can I give my dog some love now? Like it's just a joke, but like in all technicalities, he fucking matters too. And like it's to a point where I can hurt him just as much as he can hurt me, man.
Yeah. And in that, we sat and asked him, what do you need from her? And what does she need from you? And with that, and her agreeing to heal this trauma, she doesn't want to be touched, but she's open to being touched. So he tries to hug her and she shoves him off or just ignores him or whatever. And he said, I need you to not do that. I need you to hug me. I need to be touched. I need to be loved. So when she walks in the house from the gym in the mornings, she would grab his face, hold his face, talk to him, give him a kiss, tell him she loved him and she appreciated him. The other part of the agreement was every night before they go to bed, they need to give reasons that they're grateful for each other, no matter how pissed off they are. And he agreed that what he needed was that touch. She started doing that touch. That being said, if you're going to start working through your trauma and you start working on those things, guess what's going to surface?
Everything was
More of
going so good for like 2 weeks. It was so dope. I was like, this is it. Like we did it. And then nope, boom, something else came up instantly.
And it was really interesting because the excuse for her behavior that kept coming up was, it's because he is doing this bachelor party. It's because he's hanging out with his brothers and they behave badly. And it's not like these aren't true reasonings or excuses, but
For it to affect me the way it did was unnecessary.
And in our conversations, I kept saying like, okay, but why is this bothering you so much? Dig further into it.
Because he did this, because he did that, because he made me feel some sort of way, because he isn't doing what I'm expecting him to do. But in all realities, I should never allow somebody to make me feel some sort of way, because the only reason I'm feeling some sort of way is because I want him to stay home with me because I'm having a hard time and he's going to go hang out and, you know, have a good time with his brothers while I'm sitting here trying to go through my shit. And that's not fair. But why is it fair for me to make him hurt just because I'm hurting? And I was really good at doing that. I was really good at making somebody hurt because I'm hurting. Like I'm hurting and it's your fault and you need to hurt too. Where Mare called me out on that like a year ago when I first started getting sober. And she's like, you make it so that I'm hurting because you're hurting. And I was like instantly offended. I'm like, fuck you. No, I don't. That's not fair. Well, you made me feel like this, so you should feel that way. And she's like, but I didn't though. Like I didn't make you feel any sort of way. What I said triggered something in you to make you feel some sort of way about yourself. And because you're feeling that way and I said it, you're projecting it onto me, which is like the most valid thing to think about in those moments. So this past week, I held a lot of things over his head that were unnecessary. So there were a few incidences in the past where he was incredibly irresponsible, and I'm treating it as though this happens all the time and he has no remorse and no blah, blah, blah. And like all of the things, when really we've already addressed that situation more than once, and bringing it up is like, the 4 Agreements, I read it this weekend. I've had this book for 2 years, sitting in my closet. Mare's asked me if I've read it. Oh yeah, I read it. It was really good, blah, blah, blah. I never fucking read the book, okay? So I went out to my trailer this weekend and I was like, I need to bring a book with me, but it has to be a self-help book. So this was the book I grabbed. It was small, it was short, it was simple. I'm like, fuck it. I said I was gonna read a self-help book, so I'm just gonna read this one. And this book literally changed my life. So in the first 4 pages, it said, we are the only creatures on earth to relive the same mistake once. Twice. And I'm like, fuck. So I'm literally making him relive this situation over and over again every single time I'm pissed off at him, or every time my expectation of him wasn't met, when really my expectations of him are my fucking problem, not his. So it was just a lot to like process over the weekend, and literally to sit there and be like, it's all you. It's all you, Lindsay. Like, you are the only fucking reason that you are feeling this way right now, but you're blaming it on the man that you know is never going to leave. So you're just abusing him as an empathetic person, as a man of his word, as a man who will never back down from anything, especially his family. And I am telling him, if we can't change this, I'm leaving. If we can't do this, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm out.
I'm done.
I'm done. But if he left me, it would fucking kill me. So I'm literally like, and I did a tarot reading twice that week. And both times was the Queen of Swords reversed. And she's basically calling me a deceitful bitch. Both times. And I'm like, fuck. Like, how many more,
ways
or advice, how much more do I need to hear it when my tarot deck is literally like, you've already asked me this question, you stupid bitch. Like, I am now telling you that you're not listening. And so it's a lot to blame yourself. It's a lot to not point fingers at people who make you feel a certain way, man, especially the ones you know will take it. And I'm taking advantage of his kindness, and that's not fair.
Yeah. So there was a lot of shit for her to move through.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, so another piece of what has been happening here is Lindsay.
Can I stop before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what I literally have been supporting people with this exact same. What I heard you is like, you're almost being mean to yourself. I know it's dramatic and like all the things, but you're being mean to yourself in the fact that God is actually, or the universe is actually sending you reminders on a regular to keep you present. Right? I went on this thing in India, and we went to this thing called the Govardhan Eco Village, and we're walking around, and there's these like monuments all over the place to Krishna, right? That's like Hare Krishna, and Krishna is God. And so we're going around, and this guy's like telling us, and he's so excited. He's so in love with God, with Krishna. And he's telling us these stories. And like one of the stories is that like Krishna is a baby, and he cries and he opens his mouth, and his mother sees the universe in his mouth, and she realizes in that moment that she's the mother of God. But then there's another story, and like Krishna's a little brat, and he's like stealing the clothes from the saris from all the girls so that they're naked so he can see them. And I'm like, I don't get it. And then he's fighting a devil, and everybody's like, or a demon, and everybody's like, oh my God, thank you, Krishna, you're God. And then they're back to work, and he's like a cowboy leading the cows around. So I don't get it. So I'm like, okay, I need to understand something. Why is it that like everybody realizes Krishna's God, but then they forget and he's just a little brat again? Like, I don't get it. How is this like realization of God and then losing of God? And he says, well, these are called Laylas, and they're little plays. And these happen in life all the time. And the veil, so we call it Maya in yoga, the veil goes up and the veil comes down. And so we remember, like, oh my God, we're God. This is amazing. We're so perfect. Everything's good. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. And then we forget, oh yeah, I'm a piece of shit. Look at how stupid I am, blah, blah, blah. And then it comes back up. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm part of God. And it happens in life. I was like, oh shit, that's huge. So instead of like seeing like, how many times do I need to be reminded? It's like, you know what? Thank God you've got my back, and are constantly reminding me that I am like a conscious being that kind of fell back into ego a little bit. Just throwing that out there because I hear it a lot lately, and it's like, actually, that's God having my back instead of me being a dumbass that needs to be reminded, because that's the human experience, is misidentifying as your dumbass ego that's actually is your friend and trying to help you out a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and like, I don't tarot every day. Like, it's not something that I feel needs to be a part of my daily. Like, I love it, and sometimes I do, but the universe tells me when I need to connect spiritually with Iris, who's my tarot deck. And in that entire week, the universe was like, okay, if you're not gonna fucking be aware for the rest of this fucking moment, then we're gonna tell you this is what needs to happen. And it was like she was like almost placed everywhere that I needed to see her, which is wild because I usually only have her in one spot. But like she was on the stairs, and then she was in my computer bag, and then she was by my bed, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, not that she's moving around by herself, but like I'm taking her and moving her from place to place in the house to clean, when really the universe is like, no, you need to really listen, because everything that I'm telling you to do throughout the month, you're neglecting because other things are more important. But really, are they? Because now I just ended up down a massive hole of destruction. But I also realized in this massive hole of destruction that my biggest growth is coming out of ego. So instead of being, feeling terrible for what I did and guilting myself for how I acted, because I acted incredibly irrationally. I will admit it was fucking ruthless. But if I wouldn't have acted that way, I wouldn't feel the way I do towards my husband, towards my kids, towards myself. Like, being impeccable with my word is like one of the number one priorities in my life now. And like not taking things personally and not making assumptions and just doing my best, not doing more than I can, not doing less than I can, just waking up and being grateful and doing the best that I can today. And that's all that fucking matters, right? Like, I'm so tired of this vicious circle of threatening my husband, or the vicious circle of saying I'm going to do something and never following. Like, Spartan was the first thing I ever did for myself in 34 fucking years. And I
completed it, not
fucking,
just
not even
doing
completed
it.
it. Like, I fucking placed
Trained
12th in
and
my fucking,
She
it was
trained
wild.
the shit out of herself for
Man.
3 months,
Yeah.
4 months, committed to something, and usually as that commitment would show up, Lindsay would bail. Lindsay was
I would
like,
make
"I'm
an
out."
excuse, or I'm not feeling good, or, my kids need me for this or whatever. And like, I got to the point where I literally told Meridee and my husband to fuck themselves. I was like, I don't fucking care about you guys. You can come or you can't. And I don't care. And then I got all fucking ego with Meridee. And that's where it started, was the day before my fucking race. But I also realized that I am incredibly scared of the unknown, and it makes me hella anxious. I didn't know what I was coming into. I didn't know if I was going to fail. I didn't know what to expect. Like, none of it.
You went into an
And
a-hole.
I did. I go into a-holes probably 2 or 3 times a week, okay? Like, I can't lie. We get out of them real quick. It's sticky for a moment, but it's all right, Shit.
Now you have to explain what an
Yeah,
a-hole is.
I
'cause
just
that
made that
sounds
a whole
bad.
level, yeah.
Not that I've participated in ketamine, but one thing that I know about many of my friends that are into psychedelics is that when you kind of go on a bad trip with ketamine, you fall into something they call a K-hole. And it's kind of like you're stuck in it. You can see that there's like a world out there, but you're really stuck. It's very like anxiety and producing. It's really shitty, right? Okay. Happens a lot to people. Maybe if you take too much or you have a bad trip, that's what it's just part of it. And so I've heard about this. People talk about it all the time. And my partner more recently had like a bad panic attack, really, in front of like people. He was in a situation where it wasn't the safest, and he didn't know the people, like knew them, but not really. Anyways, so he went bad. He went into an anxiety hole. So I call it an a-hole. He went into an a-hole. So now that's the joke. So now we
I'm
know
literally
he
going to use that
goes
forever
into
now.
a-holes too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so funny because it's so not what you expect when someone says you got into an a-hole.
Like,
It was
wait,
sticky.
what? What
It was
did you
sticky
do
for a
last night?
minute,
Like, what
but I got
happened?
out.
Yeah, yeah.
So funny. But yeah, so it's been really interesting to also watch her work her way through it. We're incredibly connected, much like my sister and I. And so I've been getting this energy of like, okay, Meridee, fuck off now. I just need a break. Like, just give me a break. But
Like,
it's
I
not
stopped answering her texts, and like I was just like avoiding coming
and
over, and like
responding with, I don't want to talk about it right now.
I'm just like, can you shut the fuck up, please? And I'm trying to be so nice about it because I know that like it's so beneficial, and like I need her, and like all of the things she's telling me are right. But like in the moment, I'm like, can you just shut the fuck up? Like, I'm so sick and tired of hearing what I'm doing wrong. but that's where ego, and then most people stay there.
Yeah.
And then they stay in that victim, like, oh, poor me, nobody fucking cares about me, nobody. And I was in victim forever. Like, I was in victim for a solid 20 years.
Yeah. 30.
Right, I guess. Yeah, I guess 30 years. But like
Almost.
when I became mindful, like I've been in victim since I can remember, just since I can remember. And like the biggest thing that I took away from this is I've only been sober for just over a year, and I've only been working truly on myself for just over a year. And since I've been, because I do consider myself a more spiritual than most people and more aware than most people, I'm helping my husband now grow, and I'm expecting all of this growth in 6 months from him. And I'm just a year and a half, and I'm 10 times more spiritual than he is. And I'm looking at him like, why aren't you changing? Why aren't you doing the things? Why aren't you doing this? And he's like, what the fuck do you mean, dude? Like, I have done absolutely everything that you've asked me to do in regards to helping you change me when it comes to being mindful of the people I'm surrounding myself with and my family and the way people treat me and all of these things. And he's doing what, like, he even said, he's like, I'm fucking working on myself, and you're literally just adding more shit onto the pile. Like, I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, oh, damn it. Like, it literally circles back to my expectations. And the fact that he's just fucking trying, and he's standing by me, letting me flip my shit, and then being like, I understand. Like, it's just, it feels shitty to treat people shitty when you come out of ego. Yeah. But it also like teaches such valuable lessons if you let it.
Yes.
And that's where being sober is so fucking important. Because if I wasn't sober, I would be living with my dog in a fucking trailer park by myself, working a shitty 9-to-5 job and feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah. And I would like, Lynn, you said to me in one of our other podcasts when we were talking about kind of her expectations of her husband, tell us what you told me about that. Like, dig into that one a little bit.
This is what I've been sharing with my clients. I just say my sister has a best friend, and my sister was sharing the other day. And
I love how you're inspiration. Like, I think I should take that as a compliment, right? Like, my fucked up life's your inspiration. Me.
So it's your healing journey.
Don't you worry.
I'm different.
I share a fuck ton of my own fucking asshole.
Yeah, I know. I'm just, I love it. I'm actually flattered. Right on.
You're a teaching point. There's probably some people watching this that are like, that's who she was talking about.
Here I am.
So I spent a lot of time talking about, first and foremost, on the side note, one time I was in a fight with Rafa, and I said, listen, this is not conscious communication. And he was like, I don't even know what that fucking means.
That means I can't talk to you without saying mean shit. So leave me the fuck alone, please. I don't want to say mean things.
He's like, I really want to try, but I don't even know half the fucking things that you're saying right now. And I'm like, okay, fair. Like, this is years. Okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I talked to a lot of people about boundaries and agreements. And as a people pleaser, as a previous people pleaser, one of the things that I know is like, okay, I please, and then I lose my fucking shit, and that's it, and you're cut out and we're done. I've had it, right? I'll explode, and there's my boundary. And that is not really helpful as a boundary, because then someone's like, what? So I said, my sister has a best friend. She's been sober about a year now. And she's put a boundary up. You have to be sober. Like, that's it. And I'm like, we cannot put up boundaries unless we make agreements first. And so part of that is, I know that you met Cole, you yourself drank. I don't think Cole drinks a lot in general. Correct? Okay. So then
like, when he does, he makes very ridiculous decisions, as everybody. Like, fair. He's better than I am when I'm drunk. Let's just fucking say that, okay? Like, it's not even when he drinks, it's who he's with. So when he drinks with certain people, he makes very irresponsible decisions.
Right.
And that's what it is.
But he allows other people's influences much stronger when he's drinking.
Yes.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that, he's a bad person, or that he's a bad husband, father, friend, nothing. Like, it's just, that's me having an issue with alcohol in general.
Right.
Like, he made one mistake which what could have been a massive mistake.
Yeah.
Like, do not get me wrong, I'm still real fucking pissed about it. But it doesn't give me an excuse to keep making him relive that moment when he's already feeling some sort of way about it. And I know that. If he didn't give a fuck and he was still drinking and partying every weekend, blah, 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 it'd be a different story.
Yes.
So I asked him and I set a boundary. Listen, right now at this moment in my journey, I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't drink. Like, can you not drink? And initially he said no. I can't see myself not drinking because it's not an addiction for me. And I'm like, and I understand that, but there's also, like, if I can put it into perspective for you to understand, there's a lot of things that I have done for your family that I don't understand, that have put me in a very, very uncomfortable situation and put me in a situation to go against what I believe in to make you feel more comfortable in the situation. So I am asking you to do the same thing now. It might not be forever, but just for right now, I need the support because it's almost like I have PTSD from the incident, but like in a way it's like it isn't right for me to not ask him, but I'm asking you right now. Like, this is what my boundary is, and I want to live my life with somebody who's okay with being sober. And then, like, once I explained it to him, and like, instead of freaking out and fucking getting mad at him for not doing it, or, you know, for saying, I don't think I can ever drink, and flipping out, I was just like, let me try and put it into a perspective that you understand, because he doesn't understand addiction. He's not an alcoholic. He doesn't need to drink when he goes places. So he doesn't understand the concept of me having such a hard time with it. So then when I talked to him, he actually said, you know what, now that I think about it, I don't need to drink anywhere I go. So instead of me freaking out and, you know, my ego coming out, now he's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, just shut up. I tried to like explain it in a way that made sense to him. And he's like, I don't want to go into details because it's family, you know, personal shit, but like, there is a lot of things that I have done for him, which is what you're supposed to do in a relationship. Like, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand why I'm doing it, but I'm doing it because you're asking me to. Because sometimes it's a give or take in a relationship. And we have to remember that. Like, even when we're in ego, I'm not fucking right. You're not right. He's not right. She's not right. We all have our own belief system and our own opinions. But when it comes to certain things, you have to budge a little bit. And like, me being an asshole to him, knowing he's never going to leave me, isn't fucking fair, dude. Like, that sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the cool part is there's a couple things that we've had conversations about that was really good for me to also look at, because during some of this, I also got triggered into ego, called my sister and was like, okay, so am I coming from ego? And she's like, if you're not coming from love, you're coming from ego. And I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You're right, bitch. So Lindsay and I literally had a conversation where we are both, are you coming from love? Because if you're not, then you're clearly in ego. And then my coach literally, like, this is one of the things he's been digging into so strongly is, if you're not coming from love, then it's ego. And if you're not coming from love, then you're not in flow. And if you're not in flow, you're not going to get the things you want. Not just that, but one of the conversations that we had, Lindsay asked me before the 2.5 hour coaching session, she had said, like, I think I want to be a little bit softer in the world. And so then the universe literally was like, okay, let's give you an opportunity for that.
It's fucking awful.
And she didn't like it. And then I sat with her while she was experiencing all these things. And I was like, hey, so like, you're really hard right now. And probably the hardest I've almost ever seen her.
Oh, that
and
pissed me off.
she was super pissed at me and was like, well, I'm allowed and I disagree with you and all these things. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to argue with you.
I literally just wanted her to leave my house. Like, I was just like, I'm fucking ready for you to not be here anymore.
Literally.
Like, I just don't want to even look at your face.
Yeah.
Like, I saw her on Facebook. I'm like, fuck you. Just
Oh my God, these
so
guys,
mad.
when they're fucking like just talking, I'm like, oh.
Yes.
Like
And I know that she
yelling at
literally
each
just had
other.
this like,
Ugh.
fuck you.
Literally,
look on her
yeah.
face. Like,
Yeah.
she's so repulsed and annoyed by me. And I was like, well, and then we had a conversation. I went up to she was doing like a reflective weekend away. And so I decided I was going to go up and see her and she wasn't expecting it. And so I went up there and then we had a couple of really hard conversations and it kind of hit me of this, like, what if you ask yourself in the morning and at night, did I show up today in a way that I would want my kids to see me? Because do you want your kids to be hard the way that you're being hard? And she was like, no.
No,
I was like,
it sucks.
and I said, so how do you want your kids to show up? Because your kids are going to show up. You're leading by example. So what do you want to show them? So have a reminder at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. Did you show up so far as
I
the
haven't done that
person?
yet, but I forgot about that. But yeah.
And just because that makes us come back to like, who do I want to be? I said, I'm going to say just over a year ago, probably 18 months ago, I went to our shaman and I said, I want to be softer. I don't like that I'm so aggressive. I like that I'm assertive. I don't like that I'm aggressive, that I'm like this fighter. And she was like, okay. And one of the ways I'm going to encourage you to do that is to ask your spirit guides to help you. So every day I have an affirmation in the morning that says, I welcome my spirit guides on today's journey to help guide and support me and to help make me answer the question, what would love do? Easier.
And she told me to do the same thing. And if I don't invite my spirit guides and my ancestors to guide me through that day, the day is so different. And like, I have a reminder every morning at 4 o'clock. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I am just getting up and I'm getting my gym clothes on and I'm getting ready to go. And it comes up in my reminders. And that's like one of the, like my notifications aren't going off at 4 in the fucking morning. Nobody loves me that much. Okay. Like, let's be real. She doesn't even get up at that time and she loves me lots. So I know that when that notification goes off, I look and it just says spirit guides. And instantly in that moment, I invite my spirit guides. And then sometimes when I get into my truck for whatever reason, I invite them again, because some days I do, some days I don't, but there's just those days where I'm just trying to.
It's just, we'll be
more
right
at once
back
to do something.
Yeah. And for me, I'm sure even if you guys go to the beginning of our podcast, the difference in who I have become, and we're a year next month of doing this.
Really?
Yeah.
Wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy, dude. That's nuts.
It's the 1 year anniversary coming up.
And I've only been on here twice. I love that for me.
So rude. But in that, the difference in who I am and how I deal with things and how I move through things and my softness, I'm seeing a difference even in my own children. And my children are not kids. They're 21 and 22. So for my kids to be able to see that I'm able to soften, my son is so me when I was hard. And he is softening and he's like even his girlfriend's like noticing it, and it's really cute to watch them because she literally like forces him, like she like climbs on him and like is like kissing him from on top, and like just the annoying but exactly what you need. And he's softening into all of these things. And my daughter and I haven't had a fight since last September. Like not a single fight and we, once a year would have like our explosive blow ups. We don't. We have conscious conversations now.
Can I say something about that? The sutras, which is like some of the limbs of yoga. The sutras, one of the very first limb of yoga is yama, and the very first yama is ahimsa, which is nonviolence. And it literally says in there that when one is steeped in ahimsa, that everyone around them is peaceful. So it doesn't mean that that person becomes peaceful, but when they're around you, they're peaceful. And it starts with ahimsa internally. So not being violent to self. And then that spreads. So I just want to say that's like, this is the book, honestly, this is like the Bible of yoga. And it tells you all the things on how to like be happy in life. And it starts with that.
I find it so interesting too, because it's literally playing into all the things. Like, if you're like, for me, like I've worked through, loving myself, first of all, and being more kind to myself. And then that projects, this is the butterfly effect that people talk about.
Yeah.
So if you have, for example, you go through the easiest example I can think of, you go through the Tim Hortons drive-thru and you say, you know what, I'm going to pay for the person behind me, and you pay for them, and then they pull up and get their thing. Maybe they're having a shitty day. Now you've just made them feel so good. And then all of a sudden they're going to pass that on because they went from having a shitty day, which would also have a ripple effect, to having a wonderful day. And now they want to pass that kindness on to somebody else. So in the same way, your own personal growth is going to have an effect on the people around you.
Totally.
Like
I can assure you, when I am being some sort of way, I have 3 kids. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 16-year-old. So I have every different age almost you can imagine. Okay. So like, when I am feeling a certain way, or I'm not loving myself, or I'm not giving myself, when I'm not respecting my own time, everybody else suffers, man. Like my kids are I don't care. My kids are assholes when
They're
I'm an
human,
asshole.
and they're
And
human.
that's their job. It's their job to be an asshole, but it's also my job to teach them how to navigate through being an asshole.
Do you know what just hit me is as she says that, like, my kids are assholes when I'm being an asshole. This goes back to that whole thing of everything around you is a fucking reflection
mirror.
of you.
Your environment,
Yeah.
man.
It's your mirror. Your children are
1000%.
showing you how you're showing up in the world.
Sari was our biggest mirror.
Dude.
The longest
Dude.
time. And people
Dude.
would say that to me. Any spiritual teacher would be like, she's a mirror for all of you. Yeah.
And
She'd
that was a hard
literally
one
tell
for me to move through.
You are the worst mom. You don't have any food in the house. And that was so untrue, but I didn't have like macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. Oh, fucking,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I want your life to be good. Like, I'm looking at my kids and I'm like, I keep you alive. And you just have the audacity to show me such disrespect. Like, what do you mean?
And children are such a perfect place to look at that, because if your children are disrespecting you, it's because you're disrespecting yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're showing up in a way that disrespects yourself, your kids are learning by example. So they're just treating you the way you treat yourself.
Well, because
I
they
don't
don't
like the way
talk
you treat
shit
me.
to themselves. They don't look in the mirror like, ew, Harlow, you're ugly. Harlow's like, I am so pretty. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Like, and that's the thing is like
Why can't we
society
do that?
beats that out of us. Like growing up for me, it was very conceited to love yourself or
Yeah.
to think that you were beautiful or to have that time for yourself. Like
Yeah.
Cole's grandmother, like whatever, I'm not, but she's like, what do you mean you need time by yourself? We never had time by ourselves. And I'm like, that's why you're so fucking pretty.
Yes. Yeah.
To be so nice about it. Like, that's why you're nuts.
Yeah.
That's why you grew up crazy because you never took that time. And that times, the more I'm like, we all understand and respect quiet time. Like if I look at my girls and I'm like, okay, I need some quiet time. They're like, oh, okay. Just go have your quiet time. Like they know that it's so important. And that's, as women, we feel like we're not allowed to have that time for ourselves because we need to be taking care of everything else. And that's what I teach. No, absolutely not. Your kids don't even come first. You know how in an airplane they tell you to put your mask on first and you're like, that's fucking stupid. How's your kid gonna survive if you don't have any fucking air, homie? Put the mask on yourself first and then focus on the kids after. Yes. If you're not whole here, neither are your children. And that's one thing I'm really learning, that if I don't stay consistent and impeccable with my word, because when I say it, I know that I need to do it, that's when things start falling apart. And I'm showing my children to quit when things are hard. And that's also shitty.
Yes.
Mic drop, bitch.
And there it is.
Yeah.
So this is moving through your shit.
Mm-hmm. And stop avoiding it because you're literally just procrastinating the inevitable. Absolutely. Like you're procrastinating the inevitable. And when the inevitable hits, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder then than it is now.
You're perpetuating your bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said last week, right? Like under all the sad grief, trauma is the happiness, but you got to get that shit out. Otherwise,
oh my God. I can tell you that this
sadness.
past weekend and feeling and hating and being an ego has literally changed my life with my husband, with my husband and myself. Like not even Mare, because Mare and I, like I've come in here and literally yelled in her face in her kitchen. Like we are just there for each other. I don't do that anymore. That was old Lindsay. But like it was such a rewarding experience to come out of the ego. And like I've never done that before because I've always drank or I've always found ways to like eat and cover up my feelings, right? So like even this weekend I did eat off track, quote unquote, but I didn't sit there and like I would have literally gone to the store and intentionally bought every single thing that I could eat, chips, candy, and eaten it all because it made me feel good in that moment. When really now I'm just coming out of it feeling like a bag of assholes because I ate like shit and still feeling the feelings because the food didn't make them go away. And neither does the alcohol, neither does the drugs, neither does the gym. None of that makes it go away because at the end of the day, it's still going to be there unless you work through it. And working through it has literally made me like I'm a completely different person. And it took a week. It took a week of feeling shitty. Yeah. And that sounds like a long time, but if I look at 10 years from now, a week isn't a long time.
And not just that, that kind of leads to where will you be if you start now?
Right.
Where will you be in a year? It's either one day or day one.
Right.
Get to choose.
And I'm hella grateful I'm doing it right now while my kids are young. Like she started, you know, like you started 10 years ago.
Yeah, in my
And
30s.
you know what I mean? And like I'm starting right now while my daughters are, you know, in their like youth. And it's even teaching my son, like he's 16 and he's come out of a really hard moment in his life and we're navigating through it. And I'm just so grateful. And he's like, I'm just so used to you just yelling at me all the time. Like, I don't do it. Like I didn't know anything about myself or love myself enough to like, you know, have a conversation. I'm just yelling for the sake of yelling because that's just how you get in shit. You get yelled at or you get beat. And I'm not going to beat you, so I'm just going to yell at you.
Yeah.
So like the communication, even like this morning, I was yelling at him for being sick and I like raised my voice because I'm annoyed because he's not taking care of himself and he's being an idiot and it's his fault that he's sick. And he's looking at me, he's like, yeah, but you don't need to yell at me. And I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry. I don't need to yell at you. So I'm going to tone it down and I'm going to explain why I'm feeling so frustrated. Whereas 5 years ago, if he would have been like, you don't need to yell at me, I would have been like, what the fuck do you mean? Like I would have, you know,
set us off.
triggered. But like, it doesn't need to be that way. And I also don't want to raise my cortisol levels any higher than they already are. And I'm just putting unnecessary stress on my body and just all the things. I'm just trying not to stress about things that don't matter. And him not taking care of himself and being sick isn't a big deal, but I'm irritated.
It teaches
And you're
him.
going to know. Exactly. You're going to
teaches
know I'm
him.
irritated because I'm allowed. Because I'm your mom. So there's that.
Yay. Okay, well, thank you, Lindsay, for joining
Absolutely.
us again.
Definitely.
And, thank you, everyone, for joining us and your following and all of the things. We actually did some like analysis today, and we were really excited that we have some consistent followers, and we want to keep doing this. So thank you guys for joining us, and we appreciate you.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone. Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colynn and Meridee Lockoff, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.